Hey YouTube, welcome back to another video. I've ended up with another trombone that I honestly, and I know this is probably hard to believe, but I did not expect to own, and that is another tweener instrument. On this side you got basses. They're big, they're heavy. Modern ones have two valves, 562 bore or larger, 9.5 typically or larger bells. They're 593 through the valve section. We know them, we love them. On the other side, we have tenor trombones, 547 or thereabouts, sometimes a little bit more, a little bit less. Usually 562-ish through the valve section. They usually have 8.5-inch bells. And we've standardized on those two things. That's what modern makers, they're cool with those things. They just kind of stick to them. For a while, though, that was not clear. Instrument manufacturers were just like, what is going on? Early half of the 20th century, people are just like, trombones? They have valves now? What size are they? Everything's getting bigger all of a sudden. There's more manufacturers making more trombones. There's band programs now. What's a band? All sorts of things were changing, and the direction the trombone was going was not clear. And therefore, we did not have those standards. Trombones were all sorts of different sizes. There's still the really old, small stuff being made. But some manufacturers are like, what about a 9.5-inch bell and a 562 bore? And people are like, oh my God, that's the biggest thing of all time. That ended up being the bass trombone that we know and love. The 547 large bore took a little more time to exist, but that was on its way as well. And because we didn't know what was going on, instrument manufacturers also made stuff in between. They made all these in-between size instruments. These instruments include like the Bach 8, the Bach 9, the Bach 10. There's a bunch of cons that are like 522 size that you could call them kind of outmoded or whatever. 515 Reynolds. And then there's the instruments between the modern large bore and the modern bass. And I have three of them. I'll introduce them in chronological order. The first of them is the King 1485, which was conceived as just a bass trombone. This is a bass. This is what King H&M White Company was like, you know what? Bass trombone's going to be this size. And of course, over the period of this instrument's existence, it changed like 4 times, and they weren't even sure about it. Apparently, the first models of these were available in 508, so the same size as a 3B in the slide, but this stuff was all the same size, so massive bore disparity there. But for the time, actually pretty large instrument. We got a 9-inch bell. This down here is not modern bass size, but larger than modern tenors. This through here, the gooseneck, quite large, and actually ends up being about Bach 50 size at the lower tuning slide leg. Valve section on this, I can't remember, but I think it's 562. So modern large bore tenor size. For the time, again, all quite large stuff. The slide on mine is 536. Single bore, I believe. I haven't checked it for a while. And that was considered like, is this a bass? I don't know, probably. Yes. Fell out of favor after a while because basses got larger. Around the same time, maybe a little bit afterwards, Bach made this. This is the Bach 45. We know the 42, we know the 50. Some of us that are very cool, we know the Bach 46. This is the 45. And this is the instrument where Bach was like, you guys want bigger stuff? Okay, here, what about this? Is this an instrument? And people kind of collectively shrugged, and Bach made it for a while. This is the 45. Had a bunch of different bore slides. This is actually where the Bach 42 slide came from. This one is just like that. It's straight 547 with a Bach 50 crook. This is a later Bach 45, much later than my 1485, and later than when the 45 existed in the first place. This is a corporation model, so I think late 60s, early 70s, and therefore it's built on the chassis from here to here. This is all just Bach 50, the valve section. And so this is just for the Bach 50, and they just put 45 parts around the rest of it. Earlier 45s have totally bespoke wraps in a different size. with a smaller valve, all sorts of different things about them. That's not the case for this one. But once we get to this end, this is 50 size here, and then we have a totally bespoke tuning slide for the 45, and of course a 45 bell, which ends in 9 inches. So again, it's not a 42. Those are smaller than this in every way after the slide. And it's not a 50, which is larger in the slide and tuning slide and bell. And I also have my third tweener. It has shown up a few times on the channel. This is my Eland TB 920B. Of course, I knew that. This is actually designed as just a straight up tenor trombone for Slide Hampton, who played really huge tenor trombones. May have played straight basses at some points in his career. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not an expert. But this is a copy of an instrument that was designed for him. Why E.F. Durand and therefore Jinbao decided to copy just like the most esoteric possible trombone, I don't know. But this ends up being a 555 straight small bass. You can play it as a tenor. It makes some noises. I think it makes a great tweener bass like my other ones here. It's, you know, kind of normal size through here. Tuning slide, again, larger than any large tenor you're going to find. This is larger than large tenor, but smaller than bass. Ends up in a 9.5 inch bell, so it's larger than these. And is a really good instrument. I just haven't done anything with it because it's not really worth any money. I got this for literally free. And it's just, why even mod it at that point? But that's my 3 tweeners. The new one of which, of course, is my Bach 45. I did not expect to own this because I knew that Bach 45 existed. I think it's neat, but they usually come up for just too much money, and it's a useless instrument. I already have 2 tweener trombones. They don't get used at all. Why would I need a Bach that does the same thing? Apparently, they're not very in tune. They're kind of like hard to play. They're useless. But this one came up with all the pieces in very good shape for quite a good price. And I was like, you know what? Why not? It even came with a 2G. That's really cool. And it's got a retubed slide. The whole outer assembly's been just, I don't know if they just literally put a 42 slide on this 45 slide. But you can see this is still marked Bach 45 and not, I say model 45B and not 42B, which is the same slide setup. We got this 50 valve section that's in pretty good shape. It's not bad. There's some wear in the valve, right? Well, I'm not feeling any right now. Weird. And then we've got the bespoke 45B tuning slide, which is very cool. Again, this stuff is the stuff that's rare. Sometimes these are just built on 42 chassis. They have a 42 slide back here. And we got this 9-inch 45 bell in yellow brass. And the idea is, perhaps, because this is just a 50B valve section, I might make it have 2 valves. This might go away and it gets 2 valves and a new open wrap and stuff. Maybe I can take the bells off and put this on instead. I'm actually kind of excited. If this had the original bespoke 45B like wrap and all the fancy stuff, I would probably leave it as is because those are kind of rare. But a 50B valve section, I don't care. This could go away forever. It plays pretty well as is, but I think 2 valves and being able to play low C, low B would be very, very cool. I have not been playing my 1485, which is one of my dream instruments, because I think the valve is shot. Playing through it does not feel good. It's just weirdly stuffy and doesn't have center. And the intonation on this is extremely bad. I'm super flat, and the third partial especially is very low, which means I just don't want to play it, even though it's got a great sound. It's got this cool silver bell in great shape. It's just useless right now. So if I can make a chassis that fits both of these sections, that might be worth it. That might be like a really cool project. As it is, this is playable. I might use it someday, but probably not, because that's the graveyard that all the tweeners ended up in. The 1485 was phased out of production, ended up kind of splitting off into the 4BF and the 6B Duo Gravis. and the later king basses, the 5B tenor and stuff like that. 1485 and the 1480 just don't have any use. The 45B existed for a while alongside the 50B, and then when Bach was kind of forced into making a large bore tenor, they're like, you know what, screw it, and they took the slide from the 45 and they put it on a Bach 36 bell section, and we've had the Bach 42 ever since. The 45B was dropped in mass production, I think, before the corporation era. These corp horns, not very common. And they made these up into like the 90s, even 2000s, but like 4 of them. They just didn't make these because you don't need them. The tenor and the bass, they got things covered. So I got these cool horns. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but I think they might get chopped up and made into something useful rather than kind of languishing in their current question mark form. That's all I got time for now. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.